Good morning, people. We are here today once again to discuss stereotyping. We are joined by Rion and Slew and Evan. And before we get started, let's just cover this live stream may discuss trauma of all sorts to include all types of abuse. Viewers and listeners may find it unsettling and triggering. The guests on our live streams reflect a diverse set of values, morals, and ethics and these values, morals, and ethics may not necessarily reflect the morals, values, and ethics of the misfit Amish. If this live stream causes you distress, please seek support from your trusted folks and qualified mental health professionals as needed. So now that we've got that out of the way, how are y'all doing?
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
Look at the trees is here. Welcome. Hi. Good morning. How y'all feeling after like the Easter Sunday and the, all the stereotypes there?
He is risen. And when I say he is risen, I mean ball. I don't mean Jesus. So.
Oh my.
I like to say that to people and they're like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, never mind.
Regardless, it was brought to my awareness that within the last week, and I wanted to really bring this up and kind of touch on it a little bit at least. Within the last week, there was another bombing at a Kingdom Hall.
Yes.
Do you think that stereotyping played a role in the bombings that are happening at Kingdom Halls, Rion?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I think to really be able to answer that, I'd probably have to know exactly like who the suspect was, because I believe we don't know yet. So we don't really have a motive. Although I can assume that this is more than likely somebody who was associated with the Jehovah's Witness organization and no longer was. That's typically, I guess I could say how this plays out, since this isn't the first act of violence at a Kingdom Hall. And I'm afraid that it will continue to get worse. So I'm not really sure how to answer that one. Maybe as the conversation goes, I'll come up with something, but that's hard to say. I hope they find the person, because obviously this is not the way that you make change. Not saying that's what they're looking for, again, because I'd have to know the motive, but this is in no way how you affect any kind of good result from any kind of bad happenings in the past. This is just going to put more fear into those poor Jehovah's Witnesses who, in effect, are kind of victims themselves to this organization. So it's just kind of perpetrating this violence, and it needs to stop.
Do you mean perpetuating the cycle of violence?
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, like it, these people need help, not violent acts to make them change their mind about their belief system. That's not how that's going to work.
Well, and I guess like for me, part of it is like, I know that there have been previous acts of violence at Kingdom Halls.
Yeah.
And part of it has been, I think I read somewhere that one of the people, at least, that committed acts of violence was somebody who was disfellowshipped or so like what could possibly be the motive? Like, that's a really, like, for me, I'm like, okay, so if we exit out of the church and we exit out of the organization that we were a part of, that was a high control group, and we sit there and we constantly talk about how bad they are we actually stereotyping them all as
Mm,
bad people? Are we dehumanizing them? And I guess
right.
that's the question that I'm getting at is like, do you think that that is possible?
Yes, and I try to be very cautious because I am somebody who's very well, I speak out a lot. I don't know if that's considered activism, but whatever it is, I speak out. So I do try to be very careful how I word things, especially when I'm talking about um like the things that are instructed, the doctrines, the dogma. I try to make that very clear that this comes down from the organization and the people who fall under it. Yes, of course, they're the ones who are following these guidelines and these standards. They are victims and they themselves are probably trapped in situations that they don't know how to get out of. They might not feel there's a way out. And when your whole community is based inside of this small congregation because they're so insular, if you, like you mentioned, disfellowshipped, if you get shunned, kicked out, ostracized, you lose that entire community. So you feel trapped in that system. That's exactly how I felt. I felt trapped inside of there. So I try to be cautious how I word things and not say, oh, the Jehovah's Witnesses are bad people. Blah, blah, blah. I try to say the organization, does A, B, and C that causes harm. They're following orders. I try to make it clear they're victims. I would never want anything bad to happen to them. I don't even like some of the ways that people protest, but free society, you protest how you do, but I never would encourage anything that would scare or harm a Jehovah's Witness because
So, like,
it's
I
not right.
guess like when people make statements and they say things like all Jehovah's Witnesses are bad, that to me, that
Yeah,
feels
that's
like the equivalent of somebody who has in the past gone around and said that all Amish people are bad. And if y'all notice how I talk about Amish people, is I often say this is that Amish are just people. They're a group of people like any other group of people. Some of them commit crimes, and to me that feels a lot better because I feel like it doesn't dehumanize them, and rather
exactly
it seeks to raise awareness, like to change some of the stereotypes about Amish people, because the stereotype has been is they're these closer to God people, and they can't, like, they don't commit the same crimes as everybody else. That has been the
right.
stereotype.
That's a very good
But
point.
in the same token, we can't go around and we can't say that all Amish people are bad or all Amish people are and I've been hearing things of like all Amish people are pedophiles. And that's not true. That is not
Mm,
true. I will be the first person to
no,
tell you that is not true.
that's dehumanizing. That's no, that's
And
bad.
and I believe that that leads to like you know, kind of like supporting, because it is a stereotype, it's supporting acts of violence. And part of why I say that is, like, for example, during this last week, one of my step cousins had a greenhouse and he's had all these medical bills and whatever. Well, an arsonist burnt down their entire greenhouse in the month of April at the time when they're seeing to make the most profit. Like, they're finally going to get back all of their gains, everything that they've invested in that greenhouse. Burnt it all down.
Wow, that's horrible.
And I'm sitting here and I'm going, you don't see that in the news, do you?
No,
But it's also an act of violence. And I believe that when we talk about our former groups, we have a responsibility to understand that just because our experience may have been one way doesn't mean that other people can't experience it differently. And when we stereotype them into all of them are this way or all of them are that way, then we are, in fact, actually not doing any good by speaking up.
right.
That's what I believe. What do you think of that?
Is that
Anybody, open for
okay?
debate.
I have mixed feelings on it, I guess. Not the violence and everything, of course, but
Right.
the idea of stereotyping with it in particular. And I can't speak on your guys' experiences and stuff. This is just for my own. But in my Baptist church, I know that they were having trouble with their morals. I was just discussing this because there was I hate to even I don't want to get into the politics of it, but abortions and things. And the thing that came up at the time, there was something going on in the West that I think one of the abortion clinics had been taken over by an extremist Christian. There was something major going on in the news about it, and it came up as a topic in our Bible study thing. And the leader was having trouble with the morals of whether it was right or wrong that they would try to take down or kill a doctor that would give abortions, because that was considered saving lives in their view. So whenever you have like, I don't know, it's hard for me to like, I get so upset over that, you know, that they normalize that so much, and that goes into the communities and stuff as well. And it's hard for me to just look at that and be like, is it a stereotype, or am I?
Well, how about this? With stereotyping, we get these preconceived ideas and notions which lead to bias, which lead to violence. Because then they're
Right.
able to justify their violence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Like, are they justifying their violence based on their bias? So if they say that, okay, anybody that that provides abortions, which is healthcare, by the way, abortions are healthcare. If you have a miscarriage in my world, if I read that chart and code it, I promise you it's going to be coded as either a spontaneous, missed, or other abortion. It is coded as an abortion. Abortions
It's
are
a
medical
healthcare
care.
term.
It is a healthcare term.
Right.
Secondly, so if we stereotype all doctors that give abortions,
well,
and say they're committing murder, that leads to bias, and that bias leads to justification of the violence, is how I'm understanding it.
Right. We had, and you know, later on it really made me question things, because we had a miscarriage before we had my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me questioning the whole process and everything, because I'm like, this is the same procedure as if there was an abortion taking place, because now they're removing the thing that's all the same. So and it's like, okay, well, God performed this abortion then, and it's okay when he does it. Yeah.
I think it goes back
sorry,
to.
I know that's a little bit off topic.
No, don't be sorry.
No, like, it's really important that we have these conversations where we dissect, like, what does stereotyping do to us?
Yeah.
How does it apply? What happens? What does it do in the world, in society in general?
Yeah.
I think it goes back to Ryan's point of, you know, it's whether you're talking about the systems or you're talking about the people. When the people become the systems, then we rationalize and we justify violence against people,
right,
because we're trying to harm the systems. You really have to separate the two. Like when there was the shooting in Tennessee 2 weeks ago at the Christian school, it was, you know, a lot of people were saying, well, what did that person go through? But regardless of what that person went through, regardless of what happened, to go in and kill innocent children in a Christian school because of Christian principles that hurt you is wrong. But what happened was we you know, put systems over in place of humans, or humans in place of systems.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Exactly that, Evan.
And that's why I try to differentiate the two, because I don't want people just going up to Jehovah's Witnesses, because they're everywhere. They come to your house. They're standing on the street corner. You can't avoid them. You're going to run into them at some point.
They write me letters, Ryan. They write me letters.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they're so
invasive. I swear to God.
It's a very invasive form of proselytization. Like, it's horrible. It's part of colonization. I don't like it. I don't approve, but I get that they're just doing the program, because if they don't do the program, then they aren't considered a Jehovah's Witness. And then that means they won't make it through Armageddon. So they're trying to save their life. They're trying to save everybody's life. So I try to remember again that they are the victims in this, but to affect change, we're going to have to go to the tippy top, and to get to the tippy top, it's going to take legal stuff. Like, I know it sucks, I know it's slow, and obviously speaking out and education, those kinds of things
Right.
help, but to really make change in that organization, putting a bomb, like, that's not, like, come on, man. I don't
No,
know who the person was, what their motive was, but that's not doing nothing. That's
that's
horrible.
that's not the change.
I mean,
we
and the
want.
person that's doing those things,
Yeah.
they could be a victim as well, and that's not really a good excuse for the person to be doing
Right.
that, you know? So, like, it's morals. Like, people are having trouble understanding morals, it seems like, how we come to those almost.
Good point. Yeah, like, that's such a good, yeah, it's such a good point. Wow.
It,
Two good
yeah.
points, like, at the same time.
Yeah,
Boop,
we
boop.
have a commenter. Even stereotypes of evil people like pedophiles could lead to that stereotype being applied to people who are not evil pedophiles. For example, okay, but I have a problem with the word pedophile. It gets thrown around very, very loosely. And my
Mhm.
problem with this is pedophile is also a medical it's a medical term. The definition of pedophile is somebody who is attracted to children. Okay? So if
Mhm.
somebody is attracted to children, does that mean that they have committed sexual crimes against children? Have they committed
Mm,
sexual
right.
abuse?
Not necessarily so.
So to me, I talk about child sexual abusers or child rapists as
Mm.
opposed to the stereotype of everybody that abuses children is a pedophile. That's not necessarily true. There are people who sexually abuse children who literally tell the judge on court record, I did it because my wife didn't give me enough sex. It's about power and control. It didn't have anything to do with being attracted to children. But
Right.
yeah, so
Ugh.
and this is nothing personal at you look at the trees at all whatsoever. I just I spoke up in the last month about some things, and I've been being called a pedophile on the internet, by the way. I have screenshots to prove that. Just so y'all know.
People
No, I
throw
think
that
I know
word
what
around
you're
now.
yeah, I think I know what you're getting to, because as we are more and more enlightened, and we're trying to figure these things out, I think it is important to figure out and differentiate the hows and the whys as
Well, and
to why people are doing what they're doing and how they're doing what they're doing, and yada, yada.
along the lines of stereotyping and with the pedophilia and things that Look at the Trees had brought up, there is the thing where they did this with Jewish people as anti-Semitic things in the
Mm,
past, and they've done it
mm,
with Satanists and trying to
true.
say that they're all pedophiles or that they're all and this is evil and they're all going to.
Well, and look
That's
at
been a thing that's been used by
You're
Christians
right.
for a good
and look
while.
at what they're doing to the drag community and the queer community right now with that
Yeah.
word. What are they
Yeah.
doing with that word right now, right here in America today?
They're
I mean,
waging war.
yeah. At this point, that word is just used to fuel fear. And it goes back to the point again, none of it is based on acts, none of it is based on truth, but it's all based on fear. What's the most horrible thing we can think of? And we use that
Right.
word to instill fear in people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they are doing it.
Definitely.
Yeah, someone said to trans people and drag queens. You're right. I mean, I was at a protest a month ago and stood right in front of a guy who had a sign that called me a pedophile because I'm a trans man. Like, it's just something that we are hearing continuously. It's a weapon of the far right, and often of those who are committing harmful sexual abuse against children. They're not using the word against themselves. They're using it against others, but they're the ones who are perpetuating the harm.
Let me ask you a question. Are y'all aware that churches can get sexual abuse insurance. Have y'all heard of that?
Actually, I forgot about that, and now you just reminded me. Tell me more. This is something I want to look into.
In multiple states in the U.S., churches can get sexual abuse insurance to protect the perpetrators. There's no benefit for it for the survivors.
I bet
So
it's being
know who doesn't and can't get insurance for that? Trans and drag queens. They can't get insurance for that.
okay. So here's the thing too, where I get kind of like, so would it be I guess, okay, the Catholic Church did this. They actually had a fund set aside to pay off families for sexual abuse. This was, I watched a documentary years ago. It was Mea Maxima Culpa, the silence the church, or silence in the church, something like that, along those lines. But it was talking about all of this with people that were actually deeply connected to in the church and with the organization. One of the people they interviewed was a person that was actually doing the paying off of the families, and he thought that he was consoling them. It was being pushed as this way of, this was helpful for the families and stuff, and this was consoling and everything, but it was never addressing the actual issue from the start. It was just allowing it to go on and enabling it.
Yeah. Well, it's shoring up that hole that happens, because that's been one way that activists have been able to challenge these abusive systems, is by holding them accountable for the people that they hire who commit abuse. And now that there's insurance, which if you want to check out ministryinsured.com, they're one of the main people. But now that there's insurance, now these systems continue to be protected, and the people behind those systems continue to be protected.
So can I just really quickly just bring in, since we're talking about it, that it's really important that everybody finds out if their state has clergy as enumerated reporters, and if there is a clergy penitent privilege or not. It's really important that we start attacking this again through the legal system, and we can do that. We can enact change, but it's going to take a push from us as a society.
Well, really. And it's going to take a push from all of us, not just like the people who like follow the work that I do, because Amish and Anabaptist type of work, or the people that follow the Ex-JW work. It's going to take all of us.
Yeah.
We're going to have to come together, and stand shoulder to shoulder and make this happen. We're going to have to do that. But with that being said, because of like the whole like conversation we were just having, I realized, Rion, we haven't watched your video. Is it okay to play that? Is this a good time to play that now?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's just basically based on our last conversation, and we were talking about like gender fluidity and things. And I said that it's not a fad. It's not something new. This has been something since society started. Since we have writing, we know about this idea of different genders or gender fluidity. So that's basically what this is about. It's like 2 minutes long, I think. So hopefully it's not too bad.
It's not too long. All right, let's do it.
Okay. Give me just a sec.
Ideas of gender fluidity date back to civilization's inception, as recorded in some of the oldest poetry in the world. Inclusivity and acceptance are essential for creating a society where all individuals are valued and respected regardless of their differences. However, throughout history, discrimination and prejudice have been pervasive, often targeting individuals who identify as LGBTQIA+, people of color, women, and those from other marginalized communities. In this video, we will explore the importance of inclusivity and acceptance, and the ways in which we can work towards a more just and equitable society. Inclusivity is essential for creating a society where all individuals feel seen, heard, and valued. By recognizing and celebrating the diversity of human experience, we can work towards a world that is free from discrimination and prejudice. Inclusive spaces are those where everyone is welcome, regardless of their gender identity, sexual orientation, race, religion, or any other characteristic that might make them unique. Discrimination and prejudice can have a profound impact on individuals and communities, leading to marginalization, exclusion, and trauma. Discrimination can take many forms, from overt acts of violence and hate speech to more subtle forms of bias and microaggressions. Regardless of its form, discrimination can have a devastating impact on individuals and communities, leading to a range of negative health and social outcomes. Working towards inclusivity and acceptance requires a collective effort from individuals, organizations, and governments. This can include advocating for policies that protect the rights of marginalized communities, such as anti discrimination laws and policies that promote diversity and inclusion. It can also involve educating ourselves and others about the experiences of marginalized communities and actively challenging discrimination and bigotry in all its forms. Intersectionality is the idea that individuals can experience multiple forms of oppression and discrimination based on their intersecting identities, such as race, gender, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic status. Recognizing intersectionality is essential for creating a truly inclusive and equitable society, as it allows us to understand the unique experiences of individuals and communities who may face multiple forms of discrimination and oppression. Working together, we can create a world where everyone can live their lives authentically and without fear of discrimination or prejudice. Let's work towards building a world where all inclusivity and acceptance are the norm, and where all individuals are valued for who they are.
That's basically it.
Yep. That was really good. Thank you, Ryan.
Did you like it? Awesome.
Loved
Okay,
it.
good.
Yeah, for putting that together. I think that's part of the reason why we are having this kind of panel discussion about stereotyping and what it means and what is happening, is because we do believe that we can all work together and make a better world for all of us and our future generations. That's important. So thank you.
Sure.
Ooh. How does that play into when you talk about the word pedophile being used and directed towards drag queens and trans people?
Right. And
Anybody
again,
want to weigh in?
well, just basically, as that video shown, these ideas are coming from colonization. Like, these ideas are being pushed through Christianity as not as a whole. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't want to stereotype, but there's a majority push here that this is coming from
Well, now this is what
Christians.
you're getting into, right? Where, because you're saying, like, I don't want to stereotype them, but is it stereotyping to, like, there's a whole group that are oppressing
Right.
people, and then they're paying into bill mills and stuff through and they're like contributing
whole
so
nother-
much. At what point is it not a stereotype and now it's just reality? Because it's like, I
Yeah.
have trouble with that. Like,
No, I feel what you mean. I think I was kind of
That's-
having that same question myself, as
that's where I've
when
been
does-
stumbling trying to find the words for it.
Yeah.
Well, I think, again, we can hold the systems accountable. So we know the
Right.
Catholic Church was responsible for much of colonization or Christian colonization around the world. And with them, we know the Catholic Church was responsible for the Buggery Act of 1583, sorry. And we know that it was that act brought to the colonies that set up a lot of the laws that about gender, about same-sex relationships, about the LGBTQ discrimination that we've seen here in America and in other parts of the world. We know that. So
And
go ahead.
Their book is set up to where it is made to where they are basing themselves off of, like, martyrdom, off of martyring themselves, or like self-deprecate. Like, they're trying to always be the victim.
Yeah.
And that's just how the system, I mean, they tell you to
So
model
that-
yourself after Jesus, and he got persecuted and all of this stuff. So they're persecuting themselves in their religion. That's part of it. So I can't see how you can separate that.
Two things. two things. When certain religious beliefs are like telling you to model yourself after somebody who is persecuted, as like persecution is like suffering for Jesus. But when there's acts of violence committed against those groups, is that now feeding into the persecution complex of like, I'm suffering, we are suffering for Jesus, we are suffering for Jehovah, we are suffering for the prophet? Like,
Yeah. Can I just say that is also one of the things that I fear about being very mindful of what I say, because I know that these kinds of incidences feed into that whole perpetuation of like victimhood, and like, oh God, they're attack. Everything is an attack against them, when a lot of times it's really it's a majority of the legal system,
They just want the
solving
legal
abuse
system
cases and
based.
stuff like that, right?
They just want it based off their religious text. Why you guys have to persecute them so much?
Oh, right.
I
Well,
mean,
Literally.
there's
mean,
sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was going to say there's a consequences to actions, and that's not violence against innocent people is not a consequence. That's violence. But when your system has protected abusers and you're held accountable by the law, that's a consequence to an action.
That's not persecution. And as Evan was saying, like when you look at the systems like the Catholic Church, we know that. We know that for a fact. When you look at the system, like the Amish Church has this publication called To a Girl of 11, which we're going to discuss in my next live stream that's scheduled. When you look at that, it's not saying that all Amish people are bad. It's saying that this is a doctrine that the church had established that many people within the church actually use and believe.
Mm-hmm. Right. They've been standing up in courts asking to keep a clergy penitent privilege, because if they removed the seal of confession, it would ruin their religion. We're attacked. Like, they stood up there and said, word for word, "You're attacking my religion." Like, no, homie, people are attacking children. We're trying to prevent that.
So
That's what's happening.
So my question to that is, and again, like I feel like this is a redundant thing that I have said over and over and over. When do we start valuing rights of children, literally the simple right of safety for children? Okay?
Right.
When does the safety for children outweigh religious freedom in America?
Exactly.
Well, I think
When
that
do
goes
they
back,
have autonomy?
right. There is this idea, this stereotype that children are extensions of their parents, and that's all that they are. And as long as we continue to view children that way, they will continue to have no rights and be the most vulnerable in our society.
Yeah. I
Because
mean, many
children
states are
are
making it legal
innocent.
to marry at like 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that feels like if parents are required to consent to that, and at that point, like parents are literally marrying off their children
Exactly.
as property. They are seeing their children as property. That is my
Exactly.
opinion on that, because it dehumanizes those children. It takes away what could have been. It takes away any form of autonomy for that child.
Now, here's the thing. Can I add to this?
Yes.
Is like, this is where people are like, well, we have to keep church and state separated. Well, number one, y'all are the ones who are all up in our government trying to mandate what we can and can't do based on what you say is in your book, your interpretation of a book, because the book says a lot of different things. But so basically, some of these ideas are maybe cultural or traditional in certain cultures or religion, right? But that is why we do need some protection for children who live here. You got to abide by the rules. That way, we can prevent some of these bad things happening, because maybe it is traditional in their whatever to marry off your kid. I don't think it's right, but that's why we do need government to be involved in, because these
I mean,
religions can just make up any rules and regulations that they want, because that's what religions do. They're man-made, and maybe the Jehovah's Witnesses go away, but another one can pop up. At any moment they can pop up and they can make guidelines that are going to hurt and oppress people, and the government needs to make sure that that's not happening. Sorry, it's just
well, and if you look at, like, if any of you have read my book, like, you'll notice that I talk about how it is a story of collective failure on all sides, from within and without the community. And I ask this question, I've asked myself this question over and over and over. How many children in America are experiencing these failures by the very systems that purport to be protecting children, or by the very people who are like, well, we're here to protect children and that's our duty and our, due diligence. But we can't do anything because this child is this religion, or, well, we don't want to get involved in that, or we don't know what to do. And they have all of this, like, justification for not lifting a finger to help children be, like, in a safe place in the world. How many children are like that in America today?
more than we even know, I'm sure.
And why is it okay, and why is it allowed to continue? And I think part of that is what one of our commenters says: stereotyping is used as a shortcut. We don't want to get to know the other. We don't want to. Listen to that. We don't want to.
Right.
We can stay home, feel superior, instead of getting on a plane and visiting places and learning about people, places, and things. Yeah, because we can stay in that little bubble we have created where our world doesn't exist and these things don't happen in our world. Right. And then we tell people, well, you should just pray. I've been told to pray again this week, so I'm going to talk about that stereotype. You should just pray before you read the Bible, and then, you'll feel better, and blah, 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 blah. I've also been told the gays should burn this week, so I'm on a roll.
The gays should not burn?
No, we should burn.
Oh, burn. Oh.
Yes, we should be burned.
Rion, you'd brought up culture. This is something too. Is culture a stereotype? Is that something that we're perpetuating that isn't, like, it seems to feed a lot of enabling of bad behavior and stuff. Like, it doesn't seem to actually address any of the behavior itself. It diverts instead in a lot of the cases that I've seen.
What does it mean to be culturally competent? Does it mean that we sit there and we speak to the most powerful people within the group that we're purporting to help or support or provide information about? Are we only listening to the most powerful people in their society and their culture because their culture is set up like a caste system? Or do we sit there and we actually get down in the trenches and we actually hear from the very people who are the most marginalized within the community and all of the people? What does it mean to be culturally competent? Because historically, it has been that people talk to and speak to the most powerful people within the communities.
There's no intersectionality whatsoever.
If the only justification you have for something being okay or right or wrong is culture or religion or like that, those aren't good excuses to me.
Yeah, that's a good
point. That can excuse all kinds of horrible acts.
Yeah, right. And I think that's part of the problem. That's what religion does. We can just say it's my religion. You can't infringe on my religion. And it's like, well, I can't do my hands are tied behind my back now. I can't do anything about it. But that's not an excuse, as you've just said, which is really good.
Speaking of culture, at least once a week, because I work with victims of domestic violence, I hear someone say, it's just my culture. That's why it's okay for me to abuse this person. That's why it's okay for me to abuse my children. That's why it's okay for me it's used just as often as religion, if not more, as if it is culture to abuse a person. That is not culture.
Well,
I mean,
religion's part of culture too.
exactly.
It's still not. It can influence the laws and stuff, and they still
Mhm.
might not. That doesn't make them right.
It's so intertwined, and it's
Well,
so
and
yeah. No, go ahead.
it's intertwined, but also you have to remember too that like in like the 1972 case, Wisconsin versus Yoder, again, like not to be harping on this, but in that case, again, they wrote in the footnotes that Amish people don't commit crimes and they can police themselves. Now we're seeing the results of that.
Mhm. Right.
They take care of themselves. Those are
Yeah.
like it's written into law in some cases
That's
that
that's
and
wild.
and like what group, like since when are Amish people a sovereign nation? Are we a sovereign nation? Yeah. Did I haven't seen that. Like
I have not come across
so
that
so so,
anywhere.
so like are no.
That is unimaginable though. It's such a good point because the Jehovah's Witnesses, just because I can speak from experience, they feel as though they govern themselves. They don't really trust the law systems. They don't really trust police. They don't really trust healthcare, like specialists, when it comes to like mental health, things of that nature. And they're pretending like they're getting better with
Yeah.
that. Like, yeah,
Well,
sure.
even the IFBs did the same thing. It was God's law over the actual law. That was something
Yeah.
that got brought up with what I
It's
mentioned earlier with the abortion thing
Okay.
And
and
they
the
have that
moral
authority. They
justification and stuff.
create that
Yeah.
authority. They create the rules and they put themselves up here above the government.
Yeah.
As long as they had a Christian in office or whatever, they were fine. As long as that was being forced into the laws, that was okay with them.
Okay,
But
so right now, there's at least a dozen Amish people that are going to court in Ohio because they're not complying with the buggy laws. And they refuse to pay their fines. What is that? Like
So they don't have to. Are they not going to pay? Do they have to pay?
they have to pay their fines because they're not putting the proper reflective material and other things that Ohio law requires. Because what happens, like for example, even my biological sperm donor, like he was unalived by a car buggy accident. And in that community, like here's the thing is, so like, okay, this is based on somebody's interpretation of this is God's law, right? So up until that time in that community, we only had like oil lanterns on our buggies. But after that accident, the community itself eventually went to using battery operated lights on their buggies. So
we
God's law changed.
we have Amish people all around here. Like we've spoken about this before, Fee, but there's these. The other day, we were heading out to go hike, me and my sibling, and we were going for a hike. We you have to go. There's country roads all over the place. We're out there, so we were coming around this turn, and there were a bunch of Amish kids in a buggy. There was no adults there. They were all piled in this buggy, and there was like kids running the thing.
Uh-huh.
And it is
Mhm.
insane to me that like that never gets addressed. Like
Doesn't seem
is
safe.
no
Like in the child labor laws, like I mean, it's just
out in the middle of just no,
ignored, I
like
guess. I
in
don't know.
blind turns all over, and the roads aren't the greatest around these types of areas and in rural communities.
And some people
And
have no respect for like other vehicles on the road, and they'll just
no, and to
pay us
justify
all
this by,
crazy.
well,
And
that's their religion, and they just ignore it. It's crazy, but
That
that's
part.
putting lives at risk.
People die because of this.
Those children
Right.
didn't choose that
It's in the
religion.
news
Right.
all over. Like it's in the news over and over and over and over and over again. It doesn't stop because it is very, very dangerous. And it is, in fact, something that needs to be addressed. So I'm really proud of the judge in this case because the judge actually decided to put a lien against their homes. They have
Ooh.
asked to be put in jail right? They'd rather do jail time. And he says, by law, I can't put you in jail, but I can put a lien against your homes. Y'all,
Wow.
y'all, I'm just here, the bearer of news, right?
Right. My goodness.
This I don't really know like why this strikes me as like a result of a stereotype. Is like the stereotype has been that, well, that's their culture, but I think it's because of the culture. You brought up culture, and that's a really good point, Slew. We have been stereotyped so many times in so many different ways. Like, just look at, yeah. Regardless, when you start challenging that system, then you get this kind of response. And like, I would say, I believe it was over 20 people, but I won't say for sure, but I know it was definitely over 12 people. And what they like are doing is like they're asking the judge for jail time. Well, this is God's law, not mine. Like, I didn't make this up. And they're saying that this is violating their religious freedoms. And I'm like, but it's not violating like your religious freedoms. Like, you not putting proper reflective gear on your buggies or lighting on your buggies is dangerous. And I feel like, in a sense, the law is saying at this moment in time is that the lives of people matter more than you saying that, or claiming that this is your religious God's law.
Which ultimately goes back to our point: individuals before policies, before systems, before anything else. Put
Yeah.
the individual, think about the people.
Mhm. And in the
Right.
same token, like, I can't even fault these people for fighting it like that, because you know what? That's what they've been taught.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't know any different when you grow up in these systems. You don't know any different, and sometimes you don't even know to question
Yep.
any differently, or
And
you're afraid to.
you're taught that to question is to challenge, and to challenge is wrong because you were assigned
Yeah.
AFAB, or you're a woman, and you're not supposed to challenge anything because you are supposed to submit to the will of the Lord, and the will of the Lord is that you are supposed to submit to the man in charge of you.
Mm.
So where does it end, and where does your autonomy begin as a human being?
Yep.
See, we could question anything as long as it wasn't faith,
Yeah.
which could excuse anything at that point, you know?
Back at I'm sorry, no. No, like, no. I do want to point out that our comment here, stereotypes cut both ways. I have also gotten jobs because I have Lancaster Mennonite High School on my resume. Am I the asshole for writing the stereotype?
I mean, get in where you fit in, honey.
I
Just
mean,
saying.
do what you gotta do. Live your best life. I'm not gonna judge. Like, that's not, you gotta do what you gotta do.
It's not on
I'm
you if
all
someone else uses a
Right.
stereotype. It's not on you. It's on us whether or not we're going to use stereotypes and on challenging stereotypes.
Mm.
authoritarian systems are usually being run by the people with the most money and power at the top. So anytime you can go against that, whether it be by lying or by doing, I like whatever, I don't care. Like, to me,
Yep.
they're already oppressing people. If you're trying to regain some kind of status in that, more power to you, I guess. Like, I'm not going to
Right.
judge anybody
Just using
harshly
the
for that.
system.
I
Yeah.
mean, and it's hard enough for people to get a job at, like, especially women or AFAB people that come out of Amish communities. We don't have a
Yeah,
high
I
school
bet.
diploma necessarily. We don't necessarily, like, we just have so many barriers to overcome. So, like, for somebody
Mm.
like to come out of a community like that and use like that type of like resume on their resume, I think it's kind of funny personally. It makes me laugh.
Again,
Because,
I say good on you.
like, do what you gotta do. Live your best life.
It makes my little anarchist
YOLO.
heart just glow.
Right, exactly.
That's
Oh, snap.
Yeah. So anyways, I think that sometimes we have to like consider like what we need to do and what we can live with. So if you can live with that, live with it. It's okay. That's really what it all boils down to. It really doesn't matter what I think about it. It matters what you think about it. But another comment is right-wing people in general attack people for things they can't change. Generally, when a leftist makes an attack, it's for something that can be changed. I mean, that's an idea. Could be. I don't know. I don't typically look at things from right wing or left wing. I just
I
Oh,
look
think
at
it can
things.
be.
in that
Yeah.
aspect, if you're looking at Antifa as the extreme of being anti-fascism on one side and seeing authoritarianism on the other side of things, and fascism on the other side of things, then yeah,
Christo-fascism is
it's,
coming up on the rise
yeah,
right now. I mean, that's what we're fighting against, is
it's Christian
keeping this a
dominionism.
theocracy. They want a theocracy, like hell to the no. Hell to the no. And I don't get how good Christians, how they could just stand by and allow other people to be doing what
It's
they're doing with the law.
tied
I'm
into
just
our
kind of
it,
shocked.
it goes along with our capitalist system. Like
Yeah, well, yeah.
the hierarchy, all of it just fits perfect with religion.
Mm,
Well, if they were to do something, it would require them to challenge their perception of the world as a whole. Like, I've met doctors who, after like 5 minutes with me, here's an example. It happened a couple months ago. I met this doctor, and in the course of like, I'm not a patient, I'm not nothing, right? And they overheard something that I said to somebody else, and they said, "Wait, you were Amish? Blah 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 blah." And I said, "Yes, I was." And they said, "Well, I, just really have admired so many aspects of Amish culture." And I said, "I'd invite you to Google my name and put Amish behind it." And I go back to my conversation with this other person, and 20 minutes later, when I went to leave, this doctor said, "Holy shit."
right?
Because part of that is in order for you to receive new information, you have to be open and willing to receive new information. What
Mm.
happens inside of high control groups? Do high control groups not sit there and use like things like behavior control, like how you're allowed to respond to new information, or thought control, where it's like you're only supposed to think about it in this way, and if you deviate from that, then are you questioning God, and is that a sin, and is there hope for your soul? And so there's this whole rabbit hole, like derailing the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And they also limit the information that you can access often.
I feel like sometimes just catching people off guard, like you did not that you did anything shocking, but you were just kind of like, do this if you want to find out more.
I'll talk
Like
to
just
you after you do this.
Yeah, you just put something in the conversation and you plant the seed. I've done that before, and I feel like just throwing in a little humdinger every once in a while to a conversation just gets a little, I'm not harping, I'm not doing anything, but I'll just mention something about being a former Jehovah's Witness and whatever, and people are just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
wow."
Yeah.
Like, dang, I did not
Well,
know that.
I don't think people are used to pushback any at all. Like even the least little bit seems just foreign to them. It's
Mm,
And another
true.
thing is, you have to present the information in a way that people can receive it.
Mm, that's so hard.
Well, I like that you left
So
it
hard.
for them to do the work, because that goes back to your point, not wasting your time. If someone's not willing to do a Google search, in my opinion, they're not ready to open their mind. So if I leave it on them and say, "Here, look this up," and they are coming with an open mind at least. And if they're not willing to do that, then I'm not going to waste any more of my time and energy trying to educate them.
Exactly, because my time is valuable. It takes a
when
lot
they
of
don't-
energy.
When they
to
don't
It
do that,
does.
then they double down on their own assumptions about shit. That is kind of the worst. Like,
I'm a
the
terrible
worst
person.
form of gaslighting that
Yeah, it is so bad.
I'll get pissed, and I know I end up
See, and I
saying
just
things
won't.
that doesn't do any
No,
good, but it's like, oh,
yeah, I just
Yeah.
won't engage at that point. Like the person who told me to
Yeah.
pray yesterday, I kind of made a reply to them that kind of said, "My book is free right now on Kindle. I bet you won't read it though, but go read my book." No replies, no further replies. I'm just like, y'all's a chicken.
My thing is, if it's something on like social media, Facebook or Twitter, like something that's, well, not Twitter so much anymore, but Facebook, where you know that if the person just keeps talking, like they're that ignorant and everything, if you keep them talking enough, they're probably going to just get themselves banned. I see that as a win at that point. Like,
Wow.
at least their voice isn't out there perpetuating that garbage,
Right.
even if it's for a short time.
Yeah.
But in person,
Yeah.
That isn't really feasible, but
No.
one thing that always works is you can always say, "I gotta go to the bathroom."
Yeah, that's a
Gotta
good
use
one.
the room.
I gotta go to the
Everybody's gotta
bathroom.
do it. Bye.
Gotta
I'm
go.
sorry.
go.
No, I've done that too a few times.
I gotta go empty my trans fluids.
It's
Really get 'em.
time. It's time for a change here.
I
Yeah.
gotta change my brake pads. I'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, so like to me, like part of that is like when and I've known people who genuinely want to know and they ask questions and they have conversations. And I've known a lot of people like that. They genuinely want to know. And they're not asking to be like, there's a difference between people who want to know and people who are closed off to any new information. And to me,
Mhm.
I don't have the energy to engage with people who are determined and committed to misunderstanding every word I say. I don't have that energy. Do any of you have
Yeah.
that energy?
No. People ask me to debate some like stuff at times, and I'm just like, it's just not my thing. I'm not into banging my head against a wall. Like open discussions, dialogues, I'm down with.
It takes away. Like I used to be that person, beat my head against a brick wall trying to prove a point, and it just took away so much of my energy that I could be using to help people that were ready or that needed help. And so I'm not going to sit there and debate someone that's not interested. Like, and I have my own opinions on whether or not other people should do that, but that's their business. They can do what they want. But I'm devoting my energy to helping people who are ready or who need help.
See, I'm like, because debates and a lot of like street epistemology and things like that. Street epistemology is a little bit better because it's questioning things rather than just trying to debate a thing. But those things were things that really helped me while I was deconverting. So it's like I have trouble just ruling it out entirely and being like, well, we should. I think there's ways to do it. I don't think everybody's suited to do that though. And
well, could it be part of we all deal with things differently? And for some of us, it's beneficial to have those conversations because we need to be able to say it out loud and to explore what we're feeling and how we're seeing this and what we're discovering and finding out. For some of us, we need that. And for others, we may not need that so much, and we may go in a different direction.
One thing I feel strongly about is that we shouldn't just go along with somebody just to shush them and let because I had that happen to me while I was having really horrible views on things at the time, and that just reinforced them. People were enabling me, and they didn't even know it, but they thought they were, kind of just agreeing to get it to to go by agreeing to disagree or whatever, but never mentioning, and you know what I mean, never giving any
So
pushback or anything.
what you're saying is, like, for example, I hosted a live on TikTok the other day where somebody came on and they used the N-word.
Exactly. Yeah, this would be a
Okay, what you're saying, and what I did is like, no, we don't do that here. You will not use that word on my platform. That is not allowed. Blah 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 blah. This is your one warning. That's it. And I tried to be very kind, but also firm. Like, I am not a space to use the N-word. This is not a place. The Misfit Amish is not a place to use the N-word. Do not use that word on my platform.
Yep.
We're not doing that. But it's a form of, like, you know, I know and I recognize and I understand that in my Amish home growing up, we used that word with no, like, idea or concept of why it could even be harmful. I have
Yep.
since been educated, but regardless, I am not going to sit there and allow somebody who has just escaped or maybe is still even in, I don't know where they're at in their journey. I quite frankly, no,
Right.
I'm not going to allow them to conduct to put that word out there like that in such a manner, in such a way, without it being checked. Because that word, no, no,
Right.
no, no.
Exactly.
And
There are
how
things, yeah.
go
There are
ahead.
things we shut down right away. There are some things, but that's not still not even a debate. Like, I'm not going to debate you on whether or not you can use the N word. I'm not listening. We're not doing
Right.
it.
No.
I'm not doing it, and I'm going to remove myself from this conversation. I'm also not the person to have that conversation with someone. You know, I'm a white guy. Like, I'm not going to sit there and educate this person. I'm shutting it down, and I'm moving on.
And yeah, that's it. Like, we don't know. And I think what you were getting at, Slew, is like not only Evan, thank you. It's not a debate. It's a fact. This is a boundary. This is a value that I hold. It's a fact.
Right.
That is
I've
not,
heard it referred to as a debate, though, just for those things. I guess that's
but
where
it's
I'm.
not a debate.
No, it isn't. You're right.
It's not
But
a
just
debate.
yeah, just giving some pushback or feedback on something and leaving it. I mean, you got to know when to dip out of it. You know.
But
Mhm.
regardless, Slew, I think like the point that I got from you is that when we escape somewhere or we exit a community and culture that has taught us that this is okay and it doesn't get checked,
Right.
we continue in it in our ignorance because we don't know any better unless we go educate ourselves or somebody checks us. Like, so
Yeah.
maybe like there can be a fine line between like allowing people to ruminate and do what they need to do to dissect their trauma and yet still having your own boundaries,
Right.
because that's another thing that
Right.
I
Well,
see.
and when we know better, then we can do better, and so
Yep.
yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it. Might seem like you're to push back on somebody like that or whatever, and if they get it, at least you've inserted something in there to where maybe they'll remember that. Maybe they'll remember that the next time it comes up in their mind. Maybe they'll start
Mhm.
questioning it more.
Maybe
Maybe
they'll
you've
go
helped them.
look it up.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll go learn why I shouldn't use this word. Maybe they'll think about it from a different perspective. Just maybe if you can plant those seeds of doubt would be great. But anyways,
Yeah.
man, these conversations are great, y'all. Like, really truly thank you for having these conversations.
It was really good.
Yeah.
It did me
It
a lot
helps
of good.
me. Mhm.
Yeah. And I just kind of want to keep having them just because, like, I don't know how y'all feel, but I like having these because these are more like open conversations and dialogue about what we're seeing from various perspectives and what we are discovering, and it gives us space to dissect some of this.
Yeah.
I feel, for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a big topic that has a lot of nuance and covers so many different, things. So breaking it down and dissecting it, as you put it, it helps me because, I never did that kind of thing in a cult. So now I'm putting my brain to work. Got to exercise it.
I always think having multiple voices is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On one hand, it highlights not only the differences between our perspective, different backgrounds, but it also highlights the similarities.
Mm.
And that to me is beautiful because it's the intersectionality between the different types of
Yeah.
church and religions.
Yep.
Kind of displays that.
I agree.
So
Like that.
The debate thing, another thing about that, thinking about that now, like a debate shouldn't be synonymous with an argument anyways. Like that shouldn't be there aren't enough proper debates in that sense.
Yeah, right.
That's an excellent
True.
point.
Yeah.
True.
But I would like to ask each of you to go around and say some parting words if you want. Rion?
Oh, sure. Again, I think that for people like myself who grew up in a cult, who didn't really critically think, I wasn't able to exercise my opinions, I wasn't able to express myself. There's a lot of places in our society, like when it comes to social things, that I'm just kind of a little behind on sometimes. I just think so. When I can dialogue with people like this, it really helps me get a better grasp, a better understanding. And like you said, even just recognize the similarities, the differences, the intersectionality, and how beautiful that can be, that we've maybe lived different lives, but it does intersect in some ways, how the high control religion affected us. And I appreciate everybody being honest and open and sharing their opinions with me. Helps me grow, and that's all I can say. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rion. Slew?
Yeah, I love being able to do this, and like this is a great group of people to be discussing things with, and it isn't just leading into a huge argument over things. But I would just ask people to stay curious and genuinely question things. And if somebody's questioning your things or whatever, I mean, as long as they aren't doing it in a rude manner, like, yeah, go ahead and question the things with them, and do what we're doing here, and just communicate with one another. I think there's a lack of communication with people. But other than that, hopefully I'll be getting my podcast up soon. Again, the
Nice.
Skeptical Satanist. If we're on YouTube, if I can get my co-host back on track with me, or if I have to do it solo or whatever, I'm going to try to get things going again. Check it out, and I always try to throw out the Recovering from Religion Foundation, recoveringfromreligion.org, if anyone's struggling with coming out of religion.
Yep. Thank you, Slew. Evan?
I just would challenge people to continue challenging systems while valuing individuals. Holding people accountable is important, but also remembering that, I know that I'm not the person that I was when I was in those systems, but I know that I was a victim and I was also a perpetrator. So if you're healing from that system, I volunteer with the Vashti Initiative. You can go to vashtiinitiative.org. Vashti is in Queen Vashti from the Book of Esther. And there we also, Recovering from Religion is a fantastic organization. I know they also have a hotline and support groups. We have a support group as well. We do bi-monthly groups. So if you're healing from spiritual trauma or religious abuse, you're welcome to look us up. All of our services are always free. And I just really appreciate these conversations. I really do, Fee. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you, Evan. Can I ask you for a quick clarification? When you say you were a perpetrator, can you just give a brief overview of what you mean by that?
Though I did not fully understand my actions, I'm part of the LGBTQ community. I also stood on the steps of the State House and protested against gay marriage. I also hurled slurs at queer people at one time, and as well as racist slurs and a host of other things. And in my healing journey, I've been able to take accountability for those things while also forgiving myself for where I was. And I think that both of those are important.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Evan. Thank you. I think it's really important that we define what you meant by a perpetrator, because we want to be very clear on, like, as far as I'm aware of, Evan is not a convicted registered sex offender. And for those who follow my work,
No, I
they
had
know
no,
why
never.
I'm clarifying this. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah. I just want to be very clear about that. With that being said, thank you all. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Slew. Thank you, Evan. I appreciate you. Thank you to our listeners. Y'all, like, I couldn't do this without your support, and I really couldn't do this without the support of our Patreon subscribers. Y'all have made it financially possible. We just filed taxes, by the way, and we're not like we're about breaking even. Just about. It's pretty great. With that being said, again, thank you to our Patreon subscribers, and have a good and wonderful Sunday, and we'll see y'all next time.